And we're coming today to talk a little bit about social entrepreneurship. What is it? Is it different than traditional entrepreneurship? And I'd like to start it off. I think one of the thoughts about social entrepreneurship, what makes it unique, is it looks at broader than just only profitability. Social, in my mind, kind of defines sustainability. It says we're looking at environmental issues as well as the social issues and the people that are involved. So, as a social entrepreneur, I'm thinking about a mission, and I have a mission that's first. So yes, I'm in business to make money and make profit, but I also want to do good, and that becomes part of my value proposition and part of my messaging as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it, because when I was at Washington University in St. Louis, what we saw was two types of these ventures. One were not-for-profits that wanted to create earned revenue that had to be a quality product, but it had to fit with their mission. The other was socially conscious for-profits, where this social consciousness and the social mission was part of their brand and allowed them to earn a premium and a higher price for what they were doing.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. The mission aspect is really important to a lot of people. I'm involved with a high school in Santa Barbara, California, Bishop Garcia Diego High School. And the mission component is really important to the people that send their kids to be educated at that high school. So much so that in some ways it actually trumps the economic side of the element. And I think that's one of the critical components, is trying to understand, both in terms of what you're doing, is how does the economic element coincide, or how does it reciprocally connect or interact with the mission side of it?
Well, it's interesting. At one time there was a for-profit business or a not-for-profit business. You looked at both, and I think in some ways there's an opportunity to rename that. Maybe it's for-profit and for-purpose, because the two aren't necessarily on opposite ends of each other.
Yeah.
And there's actually a new distinction called the B Corporation, which they're actually trying to give it a real legal classification, saying it's not only about maximizing profits, but it's also recognizing that you're providing a social good for society as well.
Well, for sure, the younger kids, the millennials as they call them, this is an important component of it, whether it's related to their personal well-being and health, or the environment, or being supportive of others that maybe have less. It's really a critical part of their value system, and how they make purchases and where they choose to volunteer.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You see them talking about, I want to make the world a better place. Not only do I want to make the world a better place, I want to make myself better. And in the in the process of doing that, I make the world better. And if I can also, in the process of that, also then do something good for myself and for my family and my friends, boy, that's sort of the ideal world.
Yeah, Nick, it's kind of exciting to think what could happen from the bottom up if they can help figure this out. And we can provide some commentary about it, but it's really theirs to create, along with some of the new information tools that we have on the internet.
Yeah, there's also, when you look at a mission-based as well, I think there's a couple different ways of looking at it. There's some companies that come out with their product that is mission-based. It might be organic, it might be more energy efficient, it might have a social mission to it. Then you might have a more traditional business that's just a regular, maybe it's an accounting firm, but they say we want to incorporate sustainability or mission-based principles into our core practices, our operations. Mm-hmm. And I guess that's a good question. How do you distinguish which would be social, a social entrepreneur?
Yeah. But it's quite exciting, and it's not just the United States. It's happening, quite broadly. And we had some students that were very conscious on a socially conscious for-profit, where they're creating running apparel, but part of their formula was to give 15% of the revenue back to NGOs that were creating clean water in their countries, and it was a critical component of their brand and who they are.
Yeah. I definitely want to, when you are a social business, though, as much as you are social and the cause is there, you still are a business, and you can never forget that you have to still look at the same principles as an entrepreneur, good business practices, good financial management, that you would in any other situation.
It's very interesting you bring that up, because what we saw, we had a rather large social enterprise and innovation competition that we ran that was strictly for-profits and socially conscious for-profits, but also non-for-profits, and they competed for large grants. We gave out $235,000 a year.
Wow.
But the for-profits were teaching the not-for-profits about the profit side, and the not-for-profits were pushing back on the for-profits that they had to be pure to their mission, and that it had to be mission-related. And that dynamic created a deeper understanding of social entrepreneurship as it relates to the market and the cause. And we're still doing a lot of sorting out there, I think.
Yeah, it's still an evolving field.
The interesting thing about that, you mentioned, purity in the mission, right?
Right.
And sometimes you get into a number of interesting dilemmas, right? So if you violate the mission, right, in the service of maybe, let's say, profitability or sustainability even. In other words, you want this particular organization to continue over time, then you can get into real difficult problems with the people that are actually funding or consuming your services.
You're exactly right. If it's truly valuable to them, and then you violate that trust, right, Nick? I mean,
Yep.
Forget about it.
That's right.
You'll go from 150 to 50 real quickly.
Yep.
In terms of the thing, because it's an integral part of who you are to your consumers and constituents, and if they don't buy it anymore, it stops cold.
It raises the issue of authenticity. I think there's an authenticity component to this, in the sense that when people are involved in a mission, there's some sort of motivation there that's deeper than obviously the monetary or the financial aspect of it.
Yeah.
And so people are looking, if they want to be part of that, or they want to do that or be supportive of that, they want to see that the people that are involved in it are really authentically committed. In other words, it's part of, in some sense, their cultural DNA that they are authentic to that mission.
It better be, because if they sniff it out,
Yeah.
whether it's your employees or your customers or your suppliers, you're going to get hurt.
Now, you raise another interesting point, and that is you're talking about the entire ecosystem. That your
Yeah.
entire ecosystem, if you're in this kind of business,
Right.
your entire ecosystem better be authentic, right? It can't, some distant supplier or some distant contributor can't be inauthentic in your ecosystem, because people will say, well, how can you allow that to happen in your business?
That's right.
Aren't you violating?
Yeah, there's a
your
lot
mission?
of movement right now about supply chains. It's about looking at your whole your whole range of partners and making sure that everybody's on board with the social mission, and it's growing right now.
Right. And the information is so much more perfect and transparent that you'll
Yes.
get caught up in a good or bad way depending on what you're doing. So I don't think you can be playing games. I mean, even you see Whole Foods, they say, well, you did such and such and such and such, and then they had to move pretty aggressively to say, we're putting controls in place to make sure that doesn't happen. Yeah, which is another interesting thing, that you could increase your costs because you've got to stay pure with high integrity.
Well, what have I'm just curious about one thing. We're talking about it a little bit. What about the entrepreneurs in this equation? We are seeing some of this kind of organizational, mission-based organization actually generating entrepreneurial behavior. I mean, where people are, for some reason, drawn into a mission-centric kind of organization or corporation with a very strong entrepreneurial flavor, a very strong entrepreneurial motivation. And what's going on there? I mean, what's happening with that?
Are you
How's that happening?
going to the point of, are they born or made? Is that your question?
Yeah, kind of. I guess part
Or
of it
are
is,
you- or-
does the mission, inspire them to be an entrepreneur? So are they made in that sense, or did they come to it with this sort of intrinsic desire, right, to be an entrepreneur?
Yeah.
It's interesting. An entrepreneur typically in the past had a driving goal to grow a business around a certain area.
Yeah.
But yes, this social entrepreneur is really about, I want to change the world and I want to make it better, and I will do it at all costs. And I think a lot of them are realizing that the best way of doing that is through business. Business has the most, potentially the biggest impact for social change.
The market.
So I think there's a good combination of the social entrepreneur, and it's driven.
Back to the classic question of, are they born or made? I think the answer is both. I also think that there's an issue of, is it the founder entrepreneur, which is what we often think of as the entrepreneur, or is it the joiner entrepreneur that is part of the co-founding team but not necessarily the leader? And I think you need both. And I think these founder entrepreneurs are, some people say we're ADD, some people say, we're too optimistic. Some people say that
Driven.
you're driven. We say
Whatever
we're
drives them.
driven, we're persistent, we're flexible, all those things. I think there's certain attributes that are there, but I also think that you can create an environment where more of that entrepreneurial intention will blossom. And you could be a joiner that becomes a founder later. Because what the environment does is, if the environment is perceived as inviting, around the ecosystem work I do, more people come to play. The IQ of the collective whole community goes up. And the ease of finding that mentor or connection or investor or customer increases substantially. So you can create more momentum, and that kind of draws people in.
Yeah, you raise another interesting point here, because one of the things that I've noticed in my work in education, particularly at the high school level, is that good high schools, and the economists have studied this. High schools that really make a difference in their communities, they're creating social capital. So it's interesting. You're talking about these individuals get involved in this ecosystem. They're learning, they're developing, they're becoming more passionate about what it is that they're trying to accomplish. They're, in a sense, they are becoming better people that are thinking more about not so much themselves, but other individuals or some problem or some issue in society that needs to be remedied, or in the world that needs to be remedied. They in turn become better individuals. That actually creates social capital in the community. So it makes the community better. And you can see this when certain parts of the country, Dave, I think you've had some experience with this, certain parts of the country have more of this kind of thing going on.
Yeah.
Which is
It
fascinating,
becomes a social
right?
brand. I mean, your brand becomes who you are, and if you kind of talk about the mission as being who you are, one thing leads to another. So I think that's probably a good way to end this and talk about leaving ourselves. The social entrepreneur has something that they want to accomplish, and by living to those ideals, they help create that. And hopefully, again, they have the good business acumen to keep that as part of it as well.
Yep. Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.